You're standing at the edge of the Mount of Olives barefoot in the twilight. The breeze carries a hint of crushed thyme and the smoke of 1,000 dinner fires. Below you, Jerusalem sprawls like a restless animal, a maze of rooftops, walls, and alleyways folded in upon themselves as if bracing for something. In the far distance, a trumpet call echoes once, then fades. You squint. The golden dome of the temple catches the last light, glowing like a coin held up to the heavens. It's massive, imposing, almost otherworldly. And right now, it's quietly surrounded. You don't know it yet, but this city has only a few days left before it cracks. And when it breaks, it will be swift, brutal, and depending on who you ask, either righteous, tragic, or horribly bureaucratic. But let's not rush. So tonight, let me softly tell you the story of a city too holy for its own good, and an empire too tired to tolerate it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, where are you listening from tonight? Drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always wild to think someone might be falling asleep to this in a hammock in Belize, or curled up in bed in Finland. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step down the slope toward the sheep gate. The stones are warm beneath your feet, though the shadows grow longer. Inside the city walls, the tension feels baked into the brick. It's 70 AD. You're entering Jerusalem at the tail end of a siege, though the city doesn't look entirely broken yet. In fact, it's deceptively normal at first glance. You pass a spice vendor, still shouting half-heartedly about his miraculous fennel, and a goat nudging someone's unattended water jug. Kids dart through side streets, kicking a deflated wineskin like a ball. People still barter, still bake, still breathe. But underneath it all, something is off. There's too much silence between the noise. A strange kind of order in the chaos, like everyone's waiting for the next blow. And not just any blow, the blow. The one that ends this thing. You reach a narrow market square. On one side, you spot a group of women weaving linen. Their fingers move quickly, expertly, but none of them speak. On the other side, a band of men in patched tunics huddle in debate. One slams his fist on a barrel top, shouting something about zealotry and cowards. You don't catch every word, but the tension is clear. Factions, always factions. Jerusalem at this point isn't just resisting the Romans, it's resisting itself. There are the zealots, radical defenders of Jewish sovereignty. Some would call them heroes, others fanatics. Then there's the Sadducees, more conservative temple elites, trying desperately to maintain some kind of ritual order. Then the Pharisees, who might seem like the middle ground thinkers, except nobody wants to listen to them right now. And then, of course, your everyday, exhausted, God-fearing citizens, caught in the crossfire, just trying to get through the day without their roof collapsing, or their neighbor turning them in for hoarding dates. You duck under an archway. A man rushes past you carrying a jug of water. He glances over his shoulder nervously. You follow because why not? Sleep can wait. Turns out he's bringing the water to a rooftop. Up here, the city is a symphony of shadows and flickering torchlight. You look west and freeze. There across the valley, rising like a slow storm cloud, is the Roman army. Their campfires stretch for miles in a perfect curve. You can see the outline of their siege towers, wooden giants with wheels hulking and patient. They don't shout or charge. They wait, calmly, like a cat waiting for a bird to get tired of flapping. And that's when it hits you. This place is surrounded, not just physically, spiritually, politically, existentially. It's like every decision made in the past century has backed Jerusalem into a corner, and now there's nowhere left to go. You sit on the edge of the rooftop trying to wrap your head around it. Just a few decades ago, this was the glimmering centerpiece of Judea. A client kingdom, yes, but still semi-autonomous. Rome had allowed the Jews to keep their temple, their rituals, even their tax collectors, lucky them. Things weren't perfect, but they functioned. Pilgrims came. Traders came. The Passover crowd alone would triple the population. But power has a way of overstaying its welcome. The corruption got thicker. The taxes heavier. Governors rotated in and out like bad actors in a long-running drama, each worse than the last. Pontius Pilate may be the most famous, but he was just one in a long line of imperial managers who had the subtlety of a brick. The revolt started 4 years ago in 66 AD. It began with a tax protest and snowballed into full-blown rebellion. There was cheering in the streets when the Roman garrison was overrun. People shouted, "Freedom and God is with us," and probably, "Let's see them try to come back." Well, they did. Vespasian marched south with legions, took Galilee, took the coast. The countryside fell like dominoes. And when Nero died and Rome descended into chaos, people in Jerusalem actually thought they'd won. For a hot minute, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, the empire was crumbling. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Vespasian got promoted. Titus, his son, took over the campaign. And now here you are staring across at those towers in the dusk, wondering how it all came down to this. You climb back down the rooftop ladder, just as someone calls for evening prayers. The voices rise, melodic, desperate. There's something comforting in it. Not because it changes anything, but because it reminds you people still believe. That's always been Jerusalem's secret weapon. Not swords, not strategy. Belief. But belief won't feed you, or stop the stones from falling. You pass a row of shuttered homes, many already looted, their doors swinging open like broken teeth. You smell rot. Not bodies. Yet. But food gone bad. A sign of what's coming. The night is warm. The moon is rising. And somewhere beyond the city walls, Roman engineers are rubbing their hands together, ready to begin another day of paperwork. Siege warfare isn't just battles and battering rams. It's math. It's rope. It's timber shipments and angles of elevation and very well-oiled hinges. Historians still argue whether the Romans intended to destroy the temple from the beginning, or whether it was a decision made mid-chaos. But one thing's certain, they didn't come here just to camp. You reach the temple steps as a cat darts across your path. Someone's muttering psalms. The air smells of dust, sweat, and sandalwood. The city doesn't sleep. Not really. It waits. So do you. You wake before the sun. Not that you've slept much nestled in the corner of a borrowed storeroom, with your arm for a pillow and the sound of groaning masonry in your dreams. But morning comes anyway, tugging you to your feet, with the subtle insistence of a city that never really rests, especially not now. You make your way through the narrow alleys, avoiding puddles of, well, let's just say, not water. Up ahead, a courtyard stirs to life. A potter's apprentice is already at his wheel, bleary-eyed but determined. Across from him, a baker stokes the embers of an overnight oven, the scent of flatbread curling into the sky like a promise. And there, ah yes, you hear it. The steady, synchronized thud of Roman boots. You step aside as a small patrol passes outside the city wall. They're on the ridge, still in the distance, but close enough to see the sheen of their armor catching the first rays of daylight. Helmets with short plumes. Rectangular shields like little doors. Their red tunics flash through the dust like embers. You've never seen a people quite so organized. The Romans, bless their bureaucratic hearts, are terrifying precisely because they're boring. They don't rage or roar. They calculate, they measure, they march. A Roman soldier can spend a week in a swamp just to lay a perfectly level road that nobody asked for. And if that road leads to your city wall, well, that's your problem now. Their camp to the west looks like a second city. It's not just tents and fires. There are supply depots, blacksmiths, latrines that are somehow cleaner than most of Jerusalem, and even a little area where someone is probably cooking lentils with military precision. Some scholars think the Roman legions in Judea numbered around 60,000 during the siege, including auxiliaries cavalry and a few professional whiners. You can't see them all, of course, but you feel their presence. And here's the thing, they're not here to play. You wind your way up to the higher district, near the Antonia fortress, what's left of it. This used to be a Roman garrison perched beside the Temple Mount, but now it's mostly a tangle of rubble and scavenged stone. Still, the vantage point offers a panoramic view of the city. And the siege. From up here, the Romans resemble a machine. Cranes lift timbers. Engineers sketch lines in the dirt. Archers oil their bowstrings. And the ballistas, massive crossbow-like siege engines, stand like sleeping giants, waiting for the signal to awaken. You wonder what keeps them going. Is it orders fear pay the promise of post-siege plunder? Probably all of the above with a little boredom mixed in. Titus isn't rushing. Why would he every day the city weakens and his men build stronger foundations, literally and figuratively? You climb down toward the lower city where some of the last functioning public baths remain. Well, functioning is generous. It's more of a hot puddle and a leaky wall, but there's still a line. The Romans may be the masters of sanitation, but Jerusalem hasn't exactly prioritized bathhouses in recent months. Still, you meet an old merchant there. He's muttering to himself while trying to sponge off 3 days of ash and regret. They always build baths, he says, more to the wall than to you. Wherever they go. Gaul, Britannia, Africa. Pipes and bricks and those ridiculous sandals. You nod politely. The sandals are ridiculous. But the old man is right about one thing. Roman infrastructure is half the reason their empire spans continents. You give them a flat piece of land, and within a week, you'll have a road, a bathhouse, a forum, and someone in a toga demanding taxes. Even in Jerusalem, once a deeply spiritual city wrapped in ritual and tradition, Roman fingerprints are everywhere. Aqueducts snake through the hills. Coins stamped with Caesar's face jingle in purses beside temple shekels. Latin phrases are carved beside Hebrew prayers. And yet, the tension remains. Always has. Rome might rule with stone and steel, but Jerusalem belongs to an older script. As you walk through the city, you pass a crowd gathered around a teacher in the street. He's not loud. Doesn't need to be. People lean in close. You catch fragments, the yoke of empire, the covenant, the fire that purifies. You've heard 100 street preachers over the weeks, each with a slightly different message and hairstyle. Some predict deliverance, some warn of doom. A few suggest everyone should eat more lentils and be nicer to their mothers. And while most of them have their quirks, one guy last week swore the Messiah would ride in on a bear. This man's words carry weight. Not because they're new, but because they echo something ancient. Jerusalem is full of people looking for signs. Stars, dreams, goat, entrails, anything to explain the madness. And in a way, the city feels like prophecy made flesh. Like every cracked stone and burning roof is the fulfillment of something scribbled on a scroll centuries ago. You sit for a moment under a fig tree. A young girl passes with a jug of water on her shoulder. Her tunic is too big, probably her brother's. She hums softly, and for a moment, you forget there's an empire outside the wall. The breeze returns. The figs smell sweet. You could almost pretend it's a normal day, but then you hear it clang. A Roman hammer strikes stone, another battering ram under construction. They're not storming the walls today. No, today is for ramps. You make your way to the northern edge of the city, where the terrain dips into a shallow valley. The Romans are building a siege ramp here, one of several. Slowly, methodically, they drag stone and earth to create a sloping path up to the walls. It's as boring as it is terrifying. No drama, just labor. Some locals joke it looks like they're trying to build their way into heaven. Others suggest they're just overcompensating for something. Either way, it's working. Historians still argue whether these ramps were purely practical or also symbolic. Did Titus want to prove that brute force could conquer the divine? Or was he simply too tired to wait for hunger to finish the job? By now, the Romans have built not one, but 3 walls around Jerusalem, trapping not only the city, but themselves in a strange siege within a siege. Nobody gets in. Nobody gets out. Even birds have stopped flying overhead, as if they too know better. And then there's the strangest part of all. Despite the hunger, the infighting, and the daily hammering, the temple still holds services. That's right. In the midst of all this chaos, priests still light incense, still offer sacrifices, still ring the bells at sunrise. It's surreal. Like holding a choir recital during an earthquake. But maybe that's the point. The temple isn't just a building. It's a heartbeat, a center of gravity. And for many here, as long as it stands, hope stands with it. You walk back toward the city center as the sun begins its descent. Shadows stretch long across the cobblestones. Children have stopped playing. The bread stalls are empty. People speak in hushed tones. Even the goats seem subdued. Tomorrow maybe the walls will break, or the temple will fall, or Titus will get tired of waiting and finally give the order. But not tonight. Tonight Jerusalem exhales. Your morning starts with shouting. Not military drums, not trumpet blasts, just the unmistakable sound of grown men arguing over a goat that may or may not have been stolen, depending on whose version you believe. The goat, for its part, looks deeply unimpressed by both sides. You push open a crooked wooden gate and step into the dusty square, where clusters of people are already debating something else entirely, whether the end is near or just near-ish. A man with wild eyes and a purple sash insists the stars have aligned to signal divine intervention. Another man, older and calmer, mutters that the stars don't pay taxes or haul water, so maybe everyone should calm down and eat something. You'd love to eat something, anything. But food like hope is increasingly rationed. And as you wander deeper into the city's winding belly, it becomes clear just how brittle things have become. The first thing you notice is the smell. Not bad exactly, though it has its moments, but dense. A mix of smoke oil, unwashed linen, old incense, and the faint sweetness of figs bruised in transit. Jerusalem is a city under pressure, and even the air carries the weight of it. You pass a group of boys chasing a rooster through the alleys. One of them is barefoot and grinning, brandishing a stick like it's a sword. You think about stopping them to ask where they got the bird. Maybe you could trade something, but they're gone before you speak. Fast as rumors. At the next corner, you meet your favorite character of the day, a rebel recruiter wearing what can only be described as a cape made from curtain fabric and pure confidence. He stands atop a barrel, 1 foot propped like a hero in a mosaic, preaching the glory of resistance. Join us, he calls out, and dine in the kingdom to come. Someone from the crowd shouts, "Will there be bread?" There's a pause. "Spiritual bread," he answers. You keep walking. Here's the truth: the revolt is no longer romantic. It may have started that way with declarations of freedom and divine purpose, and the thrill of defying an empire. But now it's exhaustion layered with paranoia, wrapped in infighting. Jerusalem is divided literally into zones controlled by rival factions. The zealots are still the loudest burning, with an almost theatrical fury. But even among them, splits have formed. Splinter groups argue over strategy, ideology, even calendar dates. Historians still argue whether the infighting among the Jewish resistance contributed more to the fall of Jerusalem than the Romans themselves. Some sources suggest that internal sabotage, setting fire to food stores, assassinating rival leaders, did more damage than battering rams ever could. In other words, if the Romans weren't outside the gates, someone inside probably would have set the city on fire just to prove a point. You pause at a cramped bakery stall closed, of course, and watch as a young woman leans down to scoop something from the ground. Barley. A handful, maybe. She tucks it into a fold in her cloak and walks away, eyes darting left and right. No one stops her. No one can afford to. Food, once a daily ritual of abundance during festivals and pilgrimages, has become a whisper. Wheat is rare. Dates are hoarded like sacred relics. Dried fish fetches absurd prices, assuming anyone has anything left to trade. And yet the city hasn't stopped eating. It's just started improvising. You peek into a courtyard where a family crouches around a small fire, roasting locusts on a flat stone. Crunchy, protein-rich, disturbingly popular. One child holds up a particularly large specimen and announces, "This one looks like the high priest." Laughter follows, thin and tired, but real. You join them briefly, sipping weak broth offered from a cracked clay cup. It tastes like boiled memories and sage. The older man across from you sighs. Before this, he says, I traded saffron. Had a client in Alexandria who paid in silver for just a handful of strands. You ask what happened. Now he says, I trade pebbles for onion skins. He shrugs, not bitter, just marveling at how the world can shift beneath your sandals without warning. You leave them to their dinner and continue toward the temple district. On the way, you pass a bizarre sight. Two men dressed in what appears to be ceremonial armor, made entirely of stitched-together leather scraps and metal scraps from cooking pans. They're practicing swordplay with actual blades in an alleyway far too narrow for safety or dignity. You pause long enough to realize one of them is quoting something from a prophet badly, and then nearly slices his own arm trying to disarm the other. They're proud, foolish, and convinced they're warriors of destiny. It's almost endearing. Almost. As you duck through another archway, you find yourself in the quarter of the city, still controlled by the Sadducees. Or what's left of them. Once the temple elite, their authority has crumbled with the city's infrastructure. They still hold some sway in rituals, but fewer people are listening. You overhear a quiet conversation between two scribes. They're copying scrolls fast, too fast. The ink smudges. One glances nervously over his shoulder. Do you think it'll survive? The younger asks. The scroll, the elder replies. No, the temple. There's no answer. You slip away before you hear the rest. Some questions don't need conclusions. By late afternoon, the mood in the city shifts again. An argument breaks out over control of a water cistern. Someone throws a rock, then another. And just like that, a scuffle erupts, not between Romans and Jews, but between locals, neighbors, friends. You step back into a doorway and let it play out. It ends in bruises and curses, not blood. But the real wound is deeper. The slow fraying of what used to bind this city together. You wander until you reach a quiet rooftop again. From here, the temple rises in the distance, massive, elegant golden. Its walls still gleam in the sun, though now the glow seems defiant, not celebratory. as if the building itself is daring the world to try something. You lie down on the cool stone, watching the sky shift from blue to lavender. And in that silence, something odd happens. From somewhere in the city, a group begins to sing, not loudly, not triumphantly, but in harmony. It's an old psalm, one you don't fully understand but recognize. A song of ascent, a song of hope. Not the noisy zeal of battle cries, but something quieter, resilient. You wonder how long they'll sing, whether they'll still be singing when the walls fall, whether the Romans in their gleaming armor and flawless formations will hear it and wonder not what it means, but how it survives. Maybe that's the real question. Not why Jerusalem fights, or who is right, but how even now, in the exhaustion and hunger and fear, someone still finds breath to sing. As the stars begin to blink awake above the embers of a city on the edge, you close your eyes and listen. The next morning, the first thing you hear is bells, not battle bells, not warning horns, temple bells ringing out from the inner courts just after dawn. It shouldn't surprise you anymore, but it still does. Somehow, in the middle of a siege, with famine creeping like mold through the city, and death hiding in every alley, the priests of Jerusalem still get up, light the lamps, and keep the rituals alive. The temple, after all, isn't just a holy site. It's the holy site, the beating heart of the city. You rise slowly, your back aching from the rooftop stone. The sky is pale, the air already warm. You've heard whispers that the Romans made progress on one of their siege ramps overnight. No one's sure how far, but every whisper now carries the same undertone. We're running out of time. So you head toward the temple. If this really is the last chapter for Jerusalem, you want to see the center of the page. The streets are less crowded this morning. People seem to move quieter, like the city is trying not to wake something sleeping beneath the stones. You pass a group of young men, once zealots now reduced to silence and suspicious glances. Even they look more solemn than usual. No boasts today, no songs. The closer you get to the Temple Mount, the more you feel it. That quiet hum of awe. It starts in your chest and buzzes faintly behind your eyes. You climb the wide steps to the temple complex, Herod's masterpiece. Massive limestone blocks, smoothed and gilded. Walls that shimmer in the sun. Columns so high you have to crane your neck until your spine pops. And then there it is, the temple itself, a sanctuary of sacred geometry. Its proportions are divine by design. Gold leaf gleams on the doorframes. Curtains of blue and scarlet hang inside the entrance. You smell burnt offerings, wood smoke, frankincense, maybe a hint of animal fat. It's overwhelming and weirdly peaceful. You're standing in the court of the women, where pilgrims once gathered by the thousands during festivals. Now maybe a few dozen linger, a few praying, some weeping. One asleep, mouth slightly open, as if even holy ground isn't immune to exhaustion. Further in near the altar, priests go about their work with practiced precision. They wear linen garments, white and pressed. Their feet move in a dance you can't quite follow, ritual not improvisation. One of them chants softly as he sprinkles water over the stones. You want to ask him something, anything, but you stay back. Some things are better observed from a respectful distance, especially when they smell like burning oxen and existential dread. You drift around the courtyard, absorbing it all. You run your fingers along the polished stone. You admire the carvings, the arches, the symmetry that makes your brain feel oddly soothed. And then you see the vessels, massive golden basins, silver trumpets, hooks and ladles made of bronze stacked neatly beside the altar. You recognize some of them from stories from scribes' scrolls. These aren't just tools. They're heirlooms, symbols of a covenant stretching back generations. You glance around and realize something chilling the priests are preparing them for removal. For hiding, or maybe for loss. One of them catches your eye. His face is unreadable. He nods slightly, then turns back to his task. You hear someone mutter near the gates? If they burn the temple, what will be left? No one answers. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. According to later accounts, the gold inside the temple was so thickly layered and abundant that Roman soldiers would eventually dismantle it stone by stone, not out of anger, but out of sheer greed. Molten gold melted in the fire, seeped into the cracks. They tore it apart just to scrape the metal from the rubble. But not yet. For now, the temple still stands proud and breathing. You step to the edge of the court of Israel and look beyond the gates out over the valley toward the Roman encampments. You can see them moving faint shadows in the morning heat. Horses, siege engines, discipline made visible, and standing out in front of one ramp like a chess piece, slightly too polished for the board, is a mounted figure in white. You squint. Titus, the general himself, young, ambitious, and already slightly sunburned. Some say he's a tactical genius. Others say he's just very good at appearing clean during a siege. But everyone agrees he wants the temple intact. Why? Maybe he respects its history. Maybe he wants to parade its treasures through Rome. Or maybe he just doesn't want to go down in history as the guy who burned God's house to the ground. Historians still debate this. Some argue Titus gave strict orders not to damage the sanctuary. Others suggest he privately hoped it would burn, so he wouldn't have to deal with what came after. You descend from the temple complex as a new heat rises. Not from the sun, but from tension. You feel it pressing against your chest, like you're walking through air that's about to spark. Down below, you spot a line of refugees outside a cistern. They're waiting for muddy water rationed by the bucket. A woman holding a baby sings softly to keep the infant calm. The man behind her clutches a single coin so hard it leaves an imprint in his palm. You move past them toward a side alley where the old Essene quarters once were. A quiet neighborhood once full of scroll scribes and overly stern dietary restrictions. Now it's mostly silence, but in one corner you find something unexpected. A boy, maybe 10, sitting cross-legged beside a wall, etching letters into clay with a stick. You kneel beside him. What are you writing? He doesn't look up. Names. Of who? Everyone I remember. He pauses, then adds softly, just in case. You leave him to it. Back through the maze of homes and half-barricaded streets, you return toward the market square. A preacher stands on an overturned crate beard, wild eyes sunken. The temple will not save you. He cries, only the truth. Only repentance. Someone throws a fig at him. He catches it, eats it, keeps preaching. The temple bells ring again closer to midday now. You wonder how many days they've got left in them. 2, 3, 10. You hear someone laugh nearby and it startles you. It's been hours since you heard laughter that wasn't bitter or delirious. You glance over. A couple of older men are playing a game of knucklebones near a cracked well. One holds up a winning throw and shouts, "Aha! Take that, Isaac. You owe me a fig." Isaac replies, "What fig?" They both laugh. It's not much, but it's something. As you sit beside them, grateful for the shade, you think about the temple again. About the priests still lighting lamps. The boy writing names in clay. The stubborn singers the night before. Maybe the Romans will take it. Maybe they won't. But until then, Jerusalem keeps moving. Bleeding, arguing, singing, recording names in the dust. For now, the holy city stands. Evening falls like a curtain, and with it comes the hunger. Real hunger, not poetic or metaphorical, but the kind that scrapes your insides like a dull spoon. The kind that makes you glance at a leather sandal and wonder just for a moment if it might boil down into something chewable. Tonight, the fires across the city are smaller, fewer, more subdued. The scent of roasting barley so common a month ago has vanished. What drifts through the alleys now is the sharper tang of desperation, burnt lentils, overcooked onion peel, even hints of candle wax. You join a slow-moving line outside what used to be a merchant's wine shop. Now it's been converted into a makeshift ration depot. Or at least that's the rumor. The line stretches half a block, everyone clutching clay bowls, empty pouches, or hollow eyes. A woman ahead of you mutters, "Barley paste today, maybe. If we're lucky." The man behind her scoffs, "It'll be boiled thistle again. They should at least call it what it is, wall scrape stew." You don't say anything. You're too focused on staying upright. On the way, your knees tremble, not dramatically, just enough to let you know that tomorrow they might not hold up. A child behind you whimpers. His father, gaunt and sunbrowned, leans down and presses his forehead to the boy's. No words, just contact. Ahead, a fight breaks out near the door. Not fists, more like flailing desperation. A man tries to cut in line. He's yanked back, and instead of yelling, he just starts to cry. Loud, unfiltered sobs that make the entire line shift uneasily. No one tells him to stop. Eventually, someone hands him a broken bowl and guides him to the end. That's the closest thing to justice this city has left. When it's your turn, a weary teenager ladles a thin gray paste into your hands. No bowl, no plate, just your hands. You don't ask what's in it. You don't want to know. You eat in silence, crouched near a doorway, letting the warm slop dribble through your fingers. It tastes like dust and bitterness, and somehow it's still the best thing you've eaten in days. Across the alley, a man sharpens a stick into a spear, a real one. You can tell by the obsessive way he tests the point against the stone wall. He's not a soldier. He's a cobbler, or maybe a scribe. But these days, everyone is something else. A warrior, a lookout, a cook, a philosopher with only one idea left. And the idea is this: Jerusalem is eating itself. You've heard the rumors. Everyone has. About the hidden grain reserves torched by rival factions. About people hoarding food in temple basements. About elite families dining behind locked doors while children chew cloth outside. Historians still argue whether the famine was entirely caused by the Romans or accelerated by internal sabotage. But here tonight, on this cracked stone threshold with your stomach growling and your tongue raw from salt, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. You walk slowly toward the temple again. You don't really know why. Maybe it's the bells. Maybe it's the sense that something will happen there soon. Something final. As you pass through the cramped marketplace, you see fewer torches than usual. People are conserving oil. Or maybe they just don't want to see what the darkness is hiding anymore. You stop near a fountain, dry now, of course, and sit beside an old woman arranging dried herbs into small bundles. What are those for, you ask? She shrugs. Sleep? Pain? Hope? She offers you a bundle. It smells faintly of mint and regret. You thank her and tie it to your belt. A talisman. Or maybe just something to hold. You move on. Near the southern wall, a group of children sits cross-legged listening to a man with a soft voice and a scroll in his lap. And so David gathered 5 smooth stones from the brook, he says. Though he would need only one, the children lean in their faces, flickering in the torchlight. You stop and listen too. Not because you don't know the story, but because it feels different now. Like every stone, every sling, every step matters more when you're trapped between gods and empires. The man closes the scroll and pats the dust beside him. You sit. He doesn't look at you, just says, we forget sometimes that David didn't defeat Goliath with strength. He did it with nerve. You nod slowly. Your fingers still smell faintly of barley paste. Later you climb the rooftops again. It's cooler up here, quieter. The temple shimmers in the moonlight, still untouched, still whole. You lie down and look up at the stars. Above the constellations are the same ones the Romans see. Orion, Hercules, the plow. Same shapes, same light. But here in Jerusalem, they feel older somehow, like they're watching, judging, waiting. Somewhere a dog howls. Far off, a child coughs in the dark. You close your eyes and imagine bread, thick, warm buttered. It's such a cruel fantasy that you laugh out loud once hoarse and sharp. Below, the city murmurs in its sleep. You dream of a field full of barley ripe and waving in the breeze. Then you wake to the sound of marching feet. Dawn. You scramble down as quickly as your weak legs allow. In the distance, dust rises. Roman formations shift. Something is moving. Something has changed. You hurry back toward the Temple Mount, weaving through waking households. People stare out windows with hollow eyes. Some clutch children, others spears. A few whisper prayers. No one runs. There's nowhere to run. As you pass a crumbling gate, a man calls out. There at the second wall, you freeze. That's too close. The first wall fell days ago. It was never meant to last. The second wall, that's the city's skin, its breath, and the Romans are now inside it. You run toward the temple again faster than your legs want to go. When you reach the outer courts, it's chaos. Not violence yet, but panic. Priests gathering scrolls. Youths carrying baskets of temple vessels. Smoke rising not from fire but from incense, burned threefold, as if triple the prayers might hold off what's coming. You duck into the crowd. Someone hands you a jug. Take this, they say. Up the eastern steps. You don't ask questions. You just move. The temple, normally a place of rhythm and ritual, is frantic now. Order is dissolving. The sacred becomes practical. Gold candlesticks wrapped in cloth. Showbread dumped out for storage jars. A Levite arguing with a zealot about whether spears are allowed inside the sanctuary. Someone trips and smashes a bowl. No one stops to mourn it. You place your jug near a stack of scrolls wrapped in goat hide and tied with braided rope. Ancient prayer psalms, temple records. The air smells of ink and old dust. It's overwhelming. And then just for a moment you look back, toward the stairs, toward the city. And you see it? The Roman banner, red and gold, raised high. They've breached the wall. You don't move at first. You just stand there, jug forgotten, staring at that Roman banner fluttering like a slow burning question mark over the rooftops. It doesn't wave. It claims. Bold red against the Jerusalem sky with its golden eagle glinting in the morning light, like it knows something you don't. And then the shouting starts. Not loud. Not yet. Just scattered cries in the distance, enough to send a ripple of motion through the temple courts, like wind through tall grass. Someone grabs your arm. They've broken through the north ramp. You nod breathless. You already know. You felt it the second that banner appeared. The Roman siege, so methodical, so slow, has entered a new phase. Now they're inside. You sprint with the others down the eastern steps, past the rows of torch brackets and smoking altars, back through the wide court of the Israelites. The crowds surge around you like a tide, moving in chaotic waves. Some toward the temple to protect it, others away seeking shelter deeper in the city. No one knows what's next, except maybe the Romans. You take cover near a stone wall beside a fig tree heart, pounding like a hammer on bronze. Your breath catches in your throat. Not from fear exactly, but from something like it. Anticipation, dread. The overwhelming realization that history is no longer coming. It's already here. Then you hear it. Thunk, the heavy rhythmic sound of Roman siege engines launching missiles, stones, iron bolts, even bundles of burning pitch. They arc over the walls like insults hurled by giants. One crashes into a roof 2 blocks away with a dull explosion of clay and wood. Another strikes a guard tower, sending a chorus of startled pigeons into the sky like gray confetti. You duck instinctively. There's no front line anymore. The war is everywhere. And yet within all this chaos, the Romans remain, well, Roman. From a rooftop vantage point, you watch them advance like a grid of marching ants. Square shields up, short swords sheathed. They don't rush. They claim. Street by street, courtyard by courtyard. You see one soldier pause to adjust a sandal strap, then rejoin formation with practiced ease, as if strolling through a summer garden. Their discipline is infuriating and oddly hypnotic. Titus himself, tall, polished eyes like chilled olive oil, moves at the rear, calmly giving orders to his officers. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. His presence alone pushes things forward like a tide commanded by moonlight and entitlement. Some say Titus never wanted this, that he hoped Jerusalem would surrender, that he loved the temple, its beauty, its architecture, its symbolic value. Others claim he resented it, that he saw it as an obstacle, an inconvenient relic of a stubborn people who refused to play by Rome's rules. Historians still debate the truth. But whatever Titus wanted, it's clear now the temple is in danger, and fast. You make your way through the side alleys, dodging falling bricks and the occasional body. Not many dead yet, but you can feel it rising. The air is thicker now, like the city is exhaling its last reserves of faith. You reach the upper city where some of the wealthier families once lived. Ornate balconies, marble columns, shaded courtyards, now abandoned or burning. You step over a toppled statue of a lion, the symbol of Judah, its stone face cracked in two. Around a corner, you find a group of defenders, ragged, dirty, barely standing, but still armed. They've piled crates and furniture into a makeshift barricade and are shouting to one another in hoarse voices. One hands you a ceramic jar and says, "Molten oil. If you can throw, stay. If not, go." You take the jar and step back. You don't throw it. You just stand there, jar in hand, unsure whether this is bravery or confusion. Then the Romans arrive, not in a wave, but a wedge. Their formation presses down the alley like a knife-cutting dough. Shields raised, spears forward. They advance with that eerie mechanical grace. A cry goes up. Pots of oil arc through the air. Flaming debris rains from rooftops. For a moment it works. The front ranks flinch. A few fall back. Someone shouts, "We're pushing them." And then, just as quickly, it turns. The Romans regroup. One soldier with singed armor bellows something in Latin, and a row of javelins launches in return. They arc low, precise. You hear the sickening thump of one landing. A defender drops, then another. You duck behind a fallen beam. Your jar of oil slips from your grip and shatters beside you, slicking the ground. You crawl backward, heart racing. They're winning. Again. You retreat toward the temple complex, feet slipping on ash and oil. You pass others fleeing too, a young priest, clutching a Torah scroll to his chest, like a child, an old woman hobbling with two grandsons pulling her forward. At the temple gate, the crowds surge again. This time not in prayer, but in desperation. Some want to hide inside. Others beg the priests to save the sacred objects. A few scream about signs in the sky, and then you hear a voice, calm, commanding. Titus. He's shouting from the northern approach now, his tone tight. Orders. You catch a few words. Do not harm. Sanctuary. It's hard to hear over the din. A group of Roman soldiers has broken through the outer court and is rushing the steps. The defenders here are fewer. Some swing wildly with spears, others just throw rocks. One boy stands atop the platform yelling verses until a javelin silences him mid-syllable. Suddenly, fire. No one knows who started it. Some say a Roman soldier threw a torch. Others claim it was an accident. A lamp knocked over incense, igniting oil. One priest swears he saw a zealot do it, screaming, "If we can't have it, they won't either." Whoever it was, the flame catches fast. The wood is dry. The curtains are thick with years of absorbed oil and smoke. A golden ember licks its way up a tapestry, then another, and then, like breath sucked into a furnace, the temple begins to burn. You're still there when it happens. Watching from a side corridor, as the inner sanctuary glows red, then orange, then brilliant gold. The roof begins to waver in the heat. The holy vessels shimmer like ghosts. People scream not from pain, but from something deeper, something spiritual. Like the soul of the city has been lit on fire. You feel it too. Not as a religious crisis necessarily, but as a loss. A monumental thing vanishing before your eyes. A symbol older than you. Older than your grandfather. A pillar of belief turned to ash in seconds. Priests run into the flames to retrieve what they can. Some don't come back. Others emerge with scorched hands and melted ornaments. One man carries a single scroll blackened around the edges, eyes wide as moons. Titus arrives too late. You see him standing on the edge of the court, staring into the inferno, face unreadable. Does he feel regret or relief? We'll never really know. Historians still puzzle over his reaction. Some say he wept, others say he shrugged. The Roman record is tidy, convenient. But here, in the flickering red light of the burning temple, you suspect the truth is more complicated. You stay there, crouched behind a pillar, watching as the roof collapses inward with a deafening groan. A shock wave of smoke and sparks rushes past. You shield your eyes. When you look again, the temple is a skeleton. Still grand, still sacred, but crumbling fast. Jerusalem is losing its heart, and you, ash-covered and silent, are one of the last to witness it. Smoke settles over the city like a second sky. You stagger away from the temple ruins, your hair and skin caked in ash, your tunic stiff with soot. The world feels muffled, like someone stuffed wool into your ears and painted gray over everything you knew. Behind you, the flames crackle lazily now, less a raging fire, more a cruel smolder. The temple has stopped screaming. What remains are embered ribs of sacred architecture and a few crumbling pillars trying very hard to keep their dignity. You glance back once more and feel an absurd sense of guilt. Like maybe you should have done anything to stop it. But what really, throw yourself at a Roman torch? Shout at the wind. So you just walk. Slowly, aimlessly, toward what used to be familiar. But nothing feels familiar anymore. The air tastes metallic. The stones under your sandals are warm with absorbed heat. And the people, those still standing, move like ghosts. Silent, wide-eyed, ash-covered. You pass a woman cradling a burnt wooden bowl. She rocks it gently, like an infant. You don't ask. You reach a side street near the pool of Siloam. The water's gone brackish. Someone's using it to wash soot from their arms. A boy nearby scrapes at his face with a flat stone, trying to clean off the black streaks. He's crying, but only in silence. You duck into a ruined doorway and sit. Your knees crack. Your lungs ache. And for the first time, you realize Jerusalem is not coming back from this. Not as it was. Not entirely. But that's not the strangest part. The strangest part is that beneath all the mourning and the rubble and the dust, life keeps trying. A man walks by with a cart. A real cart. 2 wheels? and a squeaky axle. It's filled with pottery. He calls out in a hoarse voice, "Jugs, cups, unburned." You watch as someone actually buys one. They trade a broken sandal and half a fig. And both of them smile. For a second. Then they remember. You push yourself to your feet and begin walking again. As you pass a half-collapsed home, a low voice calls to you from the shadows. Water. You stop. Squint. A girl no more than 12 emerges holding a small skin. Her eyes are cautious, calculating. You nod. She tosses it. It's warm, stale, but clean. You drink half, then throw it back. She catches it, vanishes. No thanks needed. Up ahead, you find the remains of a communal bathhouse. Cracked tiles, smoke-stained walls. A Roman spear jammed awkwardly into a support beam like someone tried to redecorate and gave up halfway. But inside, huddled near the drained pool, you find people. 6 of them, maybe 7. It's hard to count everyone so still. They're not hiding. Not really. Just resting. Quiet, sharing body heat. One woman fans an old man's face with her sleeve. Another brushes dust from a scroll as gently as if she's stroking a child's hair. You sit among them. No words, just breath. After a while, the old man speaks. This isn't the first time, he says. You look up. The first time, he nods. Destruction. We've been here before. The Babylonians took it all once, too. Burned it. Took the best of us captive. Thought that would end it. Did it, you ask? He smiles. You're sitting here, aren't you? You want to believe him. He closes his eyes. Starts humming a tune you don't recognize, low, melodic, and steady. The others pick it up. No words. Just sound. You leave quietly, not wanting to break whatever fragile piece they've built in that broken chamber. Back outside, the sky is dark again. The sun has given up on this day. You head toward the city's eastern wall. Not to flee, there's no way out, but to see. To witness the new world that's being built or destroyed, or both. And that's when you find the tunnel. You'd heard rumors, of course. Secret passages, hidden cistern routes, smugglers' trails from the days before the siege. But now you see one partially exposed by a collapsed wall. The stones around the entrance are scorched, but the archway remains intact. You duck in. Cool air meets your skin like a memory. Inside, the walls are damp. Roots dangle from the ceiling like skeletal fingers. Your footsteps echo. You pass a pile of broken amphorae, a torch stub, a scribbled prayer in charcoal on the wall. Deliver us. Someone had hope down here once, further in the tunnel forks. You follow the right path. It leads to another chamber, and there, hunched over a map, sits a man. He startles when he sees you, then relaxes. Don't worry, he says. I'm not important. You step closer. He gestures to the map, hand-drawn, smeared with sweat and maybe blood. Water lines, he explains, and escape routes. Or what's left of them. Are they working? Some? He shrugs. Until someone rats them out. Or collapses them by mistake. Why do you still bother, you ask? He looks up, eyes sharp. Because someone has to remember how we lasted, even if we don't. You sit beside him for a while. He tells you about a Roman patrol nearly getting lost in one of the cistern mazes. About smugglers ferrying barley flour through the drains. About a mother who gave birth down here in the dark, holding onto a pipe like a tree root. And then he says, we know the Romans. They'll make monuments out of this. Coins, arches, stories. But we will have tunnels. You nod. It's not much, but it's something. You thank him and leave your steps lighter somehow. Back above ground, the city has settled into a grim sort of quiet. There are no formal fronts anymore. The Romans now hold half the city, and they're patient with the rest. They advance like they always do in perfect rectangles, and inevitable logic. The rebels still resist, of course. They snipe from rooftops, ambush supply carts, melt into shadows. Some are still convinced the temple can be reclaimed, even though it's already ash. But most people know the truth. This isn't about saving the city anymore. It's about surviving it. You walk past a Roman checkpoint. The soldiers ignore you. They're too busy loading loot onto carts, bronze basins, carved doors, even cracked menorahs. A young soldier holds up a golden candelabrum and pretends to juggle it. His officer slaps him. They laugh. You keep walking. At the edge of the old market, you find a pile of scrolls, burnt, charred, a few still legible. One reads, "He makes me lie down in green pastures." You pick it up. Carry it with you. Not for meaning, just because it feels wrong to leave it there. At your makeshift shelter that night, you unroll it. Trace the letters with your finger, and for the first time in days you feel still. Not safe, not full, but still. And somehow that's enough for now. Morning finds you curled beneath a broken lintel, with the scroll pressed to your chest, like a secret. Your dreams were odd, full of smoke bread ovens and whispering voices that sounded suspiciously like Roman senators arguing over whether to rename Jerusalem or simply pave over it. You wake groggy, throat dry, but alive. And in Jerusalem these days, alive is a luxury item. You stretch, then sit upright as your stomach growls loudly enough to startle a nearby pigeon. The bird flaps off indignantly, like it has more important places to be. You envy it, and yet there's something different in the air this morning. Not better, just sharper. Like the city has passed some invisible threshold. There's no longer an illusion of defense. No talk of miracles or divine winds or tunnels full of armed angels. People aren't even arguing anymore. They're just moving. Quiet, purposeful, like they know it's ending. You make your way toward the Tyropoeon Valley, the deep trench slicing through the city's belly. What was once a bustling marketplace, lined with bakeries and oil merchants, is now eerily quiet, like someone pressed pause on daily life and forgot to press play again. You pass by a shop, once a spice seller, judging by the faded mural of cinnamon sticks painted on the wall. Now it's just a shell, and oddly enough occupied. A man sits cross-legged in the middle of the room, calmly cleaning what appears to be a flute. You pause. He glances up. You play. You shake your head. Good, he says. Makes this less competitive. He begins to play. Not well, but sincerely. A sleepy, wandering melody drifts from the flute. It doesn't match the city. Or maybe that's the point. You sit for a moment, letting the music fold around you like an old blanket. A dog limps past the doorway. A cart creaks in the distance. The tune continues. Why keep playing, you finally ask. He shrugs. Because the silence would be worse. You nod. He keeps playing. You keep walking. Further along the valley, you see them Roman engineers. Dozens of them. They move like ants again, efficient, unbothered, synchronized. You hide behind a half-collapsed wall and observe. They're working on another ramp. Not because they need to anymore, but because Romans don't leave things half-built. Even when the battle's functionally over, they finish their homework. You watch as they stack timber dragstones, check elevation with a tool that looks suspiciously like two sticks tied together. Occasionally, an officer walks by and makes a face, like the angle is off by 2 degrees. The builders sigh and start again. One young Roman soldier peels an apple with the edge of his gladius. He flicks the skin over his shoulder and hums a tune. You know it? It's the same one the flute player was using. Weird. And then Titus arrives. Not with fanfare. No horn blasts. Just a small mounted escort, and that face that says, "I've had enough of this, and would very much like to be in a marble villa now. Thank you." He dismounts, talks to the engineers. You can't hear him from where you are, but he gestures toward the city walls, toward the temple ruins, toward the smoke still curling from the sanctuary's remains. His eyes scan the horizon, then he walks alone for a moment, away from his officers toward a high point overlooking the city. You can't resist. You follow. You take a long route, winding behind piles of debris and through hollowed-out buildings until you're close enough to see his face clearly. He's not smiling. He's not angry either, just tired. He gazes out over Jerusalem arms folded behind his back, like a tutor inspecting a student's essay that somehow caught fire halfway through. Below him, destruction, smoke, rubble. The temple, or what remains of it, like a wound in the city's heart. Does he feel regret? Does he feel anything? Historians still debate that. Some say he was devastated by the destruction of the temple, that he tried to stop it. Others suggest that he quietly allowed it, knowing that ashes make better propaganda than submission. A burned city is a firm lesson. As you watch, he reaches into a pouch and pulls out a small scroll. Maybe a report, maybe a letter. He reads sighs, folds it again. His shoulders slope slightly. You don't know what you expected. Gloating, smirking, a victory dance. Instead, you get paperwork. And then he turns and walks away. That's it. No speech. No veni vidi vici. Just a man with ash on his boots and a headache in his future. You slip back down into the city, unsure whether you just witnessed the end of something or the start. The next neighborhood you pass through is almost eerily untouched. A few homes still stand windows unbroken. A cistern full of relatively clean water. You wonder if the Romans simply skipped this block, or if it's under some kind of strange protection. Then you see the reason. On the wall of the central house, painted in charcoal, plague. Do not enter. You walk on. Down a steep hill near the southern gate, you find a crowd. Not large. Maybe 20 people. They're clustered around a man holding up a twisted bronze object. It's a menorah. Not the menorah, the one from the temple, but a smaller, battered version. From the archives, he explains, it was buried. We dug it up. They're arguing now about what to do with it. Whether to hide it again, carry it out, offer it to the Romans, melt it down and scatter the metal so no one can steal it again. You don't weigh in. You just watch the flicker in their eyes. Not the firelight at the light. The one that says, something still matters. Eventually they wrap the menorah in linen and tuck it inside a bundle. One man volunteers to carry it. They nod. No ceremony, just resolution. You continue down the hill and find yourself at what used to be a school. The door's missing. The scrolls are gone. But on the back wall, someone has scratched a lesson into the plaster with a piece of burnt wood. It reads, "The Romans can burn the books. We will teach with our mouths." You stare at it for a long time. Then you smile. Back at your shelter that night, you take out your scroll, the one you saved near the temple, and add something, just a sentence, just for you. We are not finished. You tuck it away. Outside, the fires burn lower. The city breathes raggedly, but still, and so do you. Morning comes without birdsong. No cheerful chirps, no fluttering wings. Just wind dust and the low groan of timbers shifting under the weight of broken buildings. You wake with your face against a slab of sun-warmed limestone, wondering briefly if you've become part of the ruins. You haven't. Not yet. You rise slowly, joints creaking, and step into what used to be a street. It barely qualifies anymore, just a passage between toppled walls, strewn with clay shards and footprints filled with ash. And then you hear it, cheering, faint, distant, but unmistakable voices raised in celebration. You follow the sound, threading through alleys, until you reach an opening between two scorched homes. And there, in the battered courtyard below, you find something that absolutely shouldn't be happening. People are dancing, a circle of them, young, old, wounded barefoot, spinning slowly to a beat, tapped out by a woman with a stick on an overturned shield. The rhythm is simple, persistent. Around the circle, others clap. Some cry, a few laugh. It isn't joy exactly. It's defiance. The human equivalent of a stubborn weed sprouting through concrete. You watch stunned. One boy stumbles, and a stranger catches his elbow without a word. Two women link arms and hum an old festival melody. The kind that once echoed through the streets during Passover or Sukkot, when pilgrims flooded the city and bread was everywhere. Now there's no bread. But the song is still here. You slip into the crowd, letting the rhythm soak into your bones. It isn't long before you're clapping to eyes half closed, letting the dust rise in little puffs around your feet. When the song ends, no one speaks. They just hold still for a moment, heads bowed, hearts beating in sync. Then, as quietly as they came, they scatter, and life goes on. You head north. The Romans now control most of the city. But they've slowed down. Not stopped, just paused like a cat watching a bird that's already in the trap, but still fluttering a little. You pass a burned-out synagogue. Its walls blackened, but still standing. Someone has drawn a Star of David in charcoal over the doorway. Beneath it, "We remember." And just beyond that, a small miracle, a fig tree, still alive. Scarred and crooked, yes, but full of green leaves and even 2 or 3 stubborn fruits. You reach up and pluck one. It's warm, soft, and more sugar than you deserve. As you chew slowly, you look out over the rooftops. Smoke curls in the east. Roman formations move like chess pieces in the west. And in the center, the temple smolders less, a building now, more a memory still radiating heat. You make your way downhill toward the last major resistance point, the upper city wall. Here things are different, tense, silent. The rebels know what's coming. The Romans are digging in, preparing their final breach. The air buzzes with resignation. There's no illusion of victory here, just the hope of holding out a little longer. Or dying well. You pass a checkpoint, manned by 2 boys barely old enough to grow beards. Their armor doesn't match. One holds a curved blade that looks like it used to be a kitchen knife. The other's spear is just a sharpened broomstick. They nod at you, trying to look brave. You nod back, trying to believe in them. Inside, the defenders gather in small pockets. Some sharpen weapons. Others huddle over maps that are more ash than parchment. A few just sit staring into space. You pass a man sewing a tear in his sandal. Another quietly hums the same flute melody from earlier. That tune is making the rounds, it seems. Someone hands you a water skin. You drink. It's warm metallic, still better than air. And then you're invited, not to fight, but to listen. In a corner chamber of a half-destroyed house, a meeting is underway. Not strategy, not tactics, testimony. One by one, people rise and tell their stories not about war, but about before. A woman recalls the first time she saw snow fall on the Mount of Olives. A boy talks about the neighbor who taught him to read. A man, old missing 2 fingers, tells a story about sharing figs with a Roman trader who couldn't pronounce shalom, but tried anyway. And then a silence. Someone gestures to you. You stand, unsure, nervous. And then you speak. You talk about the temple, about the bells, about the scroll you saved, about the girl who gave you water and the flute player who wouldn't stop. You don't mention heroism, or faith, or even fear. You just speak. When you finish, no one claps. No one needs to. You sit. Later, you walk along the wall gazing out at the Roman siege ramp. It's nearly done. They've built it with patience and spite. Stone by stone, timber by timber. A ramp not just for war, but for memory. A monument to inevitability. You notice something they've decorated the edges. Banners, laurel wreaths, almost ceremonial. The Romans aren't just entering. They're staging a finale. You hear a voice behind you. The parade before the blood. You turn. It's a scribe. Ink-stained hands, tired eyes. They always do this, he says. Dress it up. Make it feel like theater. He spits. The gob hits the ramp and rolls away. What will you do, you ask? He shrugs. Right. Even if no one reads it. Especially then. You offer him the scroll you saved. He touches it gently. Then hands you a reed pen. Add your line, he says. You do. One sentence just for the future. This city did not fall quietly. You hand it back. The night comes cold and clear. From your perch on the wall, you watch as the Romans light torches. Whole rows of them like stars planted in the earth. Their formations shimmer ready. They won't attack tonight. But soon, very soon, you descend from the wall and return to your shelter. On the way, you pass a Roman soldier, alone, wandering. He sees you, freezes. You stare at each other across the rubble, and then wordlessly, you both nod. No weapons drawn, no threats, just acknowledgement. Two humans, two witnesses. He walks on. You do too. Later, wrapped in a threadbare cloak, you stare at the stars again. Same constellations, same silence. And somewhere behind all this ashen armor, the soul of Jerusalem still stirs, waiting, enduring. You wake to firelight, not from flames consuming buildings, but from rows of Roman torches marching in synchronized calm, lighting the way for men with spears and polished sandals who've already decided what your future looks like. The final breach begins just before sunrise. There's no trumpet, no speech, just the creak of siege towers nudging against battered stone and the groan of wood and mortar giving way under Rome's patient violence. You hear the wall fall more than see it. A deep dragging collapse like the city sighing its last breath. You're on the far side of the upper city when it happens, helping a boy bandage his grandfather's leg with strips of scorched linen. Both freeze when the sound hits. That's it, the old man says. He doesn't mean it dramatically, just plainly. Like someone who's been waiting for it and is frankly a little relieved it finally arrived. You step outside and sure enough they're in. Roman infantry, archers, cavalry, and those frustrating engineers who somehow look clean despite crawling around catapults all week. They don't sprint. They flow like ink poured across parchment, down alleyways, through courtyards, over collapsed barricades. You think of ants again and hate yourself a little for how accurate that metaphor keeps being. People scatter, some run, some drop to their knees and plead with God's plural or singular, depending on theology and panic level. Some hide under carts or behind burnt door frames. You consider doing all three at once, but instead freeze in place, unsure where you'd even go. Then you do something unexpected. You walk toward them, not because you want to fight, not because you've suddenly become brave, but because you're done waiting. If Rome's going to erase Jerusalem, you might as well see it happen with your eyes open. So you walk, and what you see is not what you expected. Yes, there's looting. Yes, there's blood here and there, smashed stalls, bodies, screams. But there's also an eerie order to it. Like someone issued a playbook titled, How to Methodically Unravel a Civilization. The soldiers move in formation. They set fire to strategic buildings. They don't just destroy, they collect. Artifacts, scrolls, temple vessels, gold. The temple's inner treasures, long rumored, are now revealed hoisted from hiding places beneath collapsed floors or extracted from shrines. Some of it glows like sunlight captured in metal. Other pieces are unassuming wooden boxes, copper bowls, but handled with reverence. And then there's the melted gold. You find yourself near the ruins of the sanctuary again, just as a squad of Roman soldiers prise apart the still hot stones. One of them, face red arms, shaking, lifts a slab and groans. There it is, between the cracks gleaming puddles. The rumor was true. During the fire, the gold layered on temple walls and fixtures melted and dripped down between the stones. And now the Romans are dismantling sacred architecture, not out of hate, but greed. You watch as they chip away the foundation, scraping molten streaks into small clay cups. One soldier hums to himself while doing it. Another licks a finger and taps a cooling spot of gold, like he's checking bread in an oven. Behind them, Titus arrives. Again, no fanfare. He rides a black horse armor, dusty, eyes hard. He doesn't dismount. He just watches. And maybe he looks disappointed. Or maybe he's calculating how this all plays in Rome. Historians still argue whether Titus ordered the destruction of the temple or tried to prevent it. What's clear now is that he isn't stopping this. Not the looting, not the fire, not the melting. You inch closer, close enough to hear Roman officers say, "We'll need a convoy for the shipment." Maybe two. Another replies, "They'll want it for the triumph." Ah, yes, the triumph. Rome's big parade, where generals strut beneath arches and parade their spoils, including exotic animals, enemy prisoners, and, in this case, items sacred to an entire civilization. You imagine it? The golden menorah hoisted high, flanked by soldiers in crisp uniforms. Crowds cheering for things they don't understand. You turn away. Further down the hill, in the heart of the city, civilians are being rounded up. They're herded like livestock into large courtyards. Some are bound. Some are questioned. A few are pulled aside, likely for execution or interrogation. You see a man try to bribe a centurion with a silver ring. He's struck down instantly. Nearby, a woman is dragged away screaming for her child. A boy hides under a bench, hands over his mouth. You move to help, but someone grabs your arm. An old man, eyes sharp. Don't he whispers, "They'll kill you too." So you freeze. Again. The sun rises higher. The air grows thick. The smell of burning cedar mingles with sweat and fear. You're pressed into a line, people on either side, silent, shaking. Roman scribes walk up and down the rows recording names, ages, trades. You give your name. They don't write it down. Too old, one says. Send them west. You're shuffled toward the western courtyard. You pass another man who begs to stay, says he can make shoes. He's dismissed. And then, of all things, you spot a familiar face. The flute player. He's sitting on the edge of a collapsed step flute, still in hand, watching the world fall apart. You sit beside him. You survived, you say. He nods. You going to play. He lifts the flute, blows one note, just one, then lowers it. Not yet, he says. Nearby, a Roman official shouts orders. Groups are formed. Some are marched toward the city gates. Others are loaded into carts. The city is being emptied like a wine jar tipped on its side. You rise and follow your group's slow, aching steps. Behind you, Jerusalem smokes. The sky is gray. The temple's golden dome is no more. But just before you pass the western gate, someone calls out. It's the scribe from the wall. He holds a piece of parchment. I finished it, he says. You glance down. The scroll is short, just a dozen lines. Names, places, a description of the day the temple fell. Take it, he says. Someone should carry the truth. You tuck it into your belt, say nothing, and walk out of the city, past the gates, into the dust, but not in silence. Behind you, just faintly, a single flute note rises. The sea smells like salt tar and the sweat of 1,000 regrets. You sit cross-legged in the holding yard of the Jaffa port, back against a splintered crate labeled Export Cedarwood Tire. Trying not to think about which ship you'll be herded onto. The ocean in front of you is too wide, too indifferent. And the idea of vanishing into it, of being carried somewhere without a name or a map, makes your chest feel hollow. Someone beside you mutters, "I heard they're sending scribes to Carthage." Someone else replies, "Or Egypt. They like us in Egypt." Until they don't. You stare at your hands. They're still stained from the temple ash, trapped under your fingernails, a smear of oil across your palm. From that moment you touched the broken altar railing. You haven't washed it off. You're not sure why. Around you, other survivors do what they can with time. A young man carves a small Star of David into the floor with a piece of broken pottery. Another hums an old lullaby soft and low like a thread, connecting her to a voice she hopes to remember. The girl who asked about the temple sits beside you now. She's making something, folding scraps of cloth and string into a little pouch. For what you ask, she shrugs. Memories, maybe? Or seeds? In case there's somewhere to plant them. You want to laugh or cry, or maybe ask how someone so young still believes in things growing. But you don't. Instead, you reach into your belt and pull out the scroll the scribe gave you. Gently, you unroll it and read the words again. Not many, not long, but enough. Enough to make you remember that the worst thing Rome could do is forget you. You're startled from the moment by a sharp whistle. A Roman officer, muscular, bored and sunburned, points at your group. You barks, on your feet, ships ready. You rise slowly, bones creaking like old floorboards. The others follow. You're ushered toward a long gangplank leading onto a Roman transport vessel. Wide deck, square sails, painted figures of dolphins along the sides that make the whole thing feel oddly festive, like someone tried to disguise a prison as a parade float. The soldiers are polite, efficient. They don't shove. They don't need to. Everyone moves because what else is there to do? The girl clutches your arm as you board. Not out of fear exactly. Just to stay anchored to something that isn't floating away. As the ship rocks into motion, the city behind you shrinks. Jaffa recedes into mist and coastline. And then for the first time, you're really leaving. Jerusalem was already gone. You knew that. But now your body is being carried away, dragged across water like a fallen flag in the wind. No one speaks for a while. Just the creaking of wood. The slap of waves. A gull crying in the distance, like it's too late for everything. Eventually you move below deck. It's dark, damp, smells of fish and resignation. But in the corner someone lights a small lamp, and slowly people begin to gather. Not for worship, not for a speech, just to be near light. A man unwraps something no one sees what. A little object, maybe a charm, maybe a sliver of temple stone. He passes it around wordlessly. Everyone touches it like a shared memory. Someone asks, "What will we be now?" No one answers. You lie on the hard floor eyes, fixed on the wooden beams above, feeling every tilt of the boat in your ribs. The girl beside you finally falls asleep, cheek pressed against the pouch she made. You drift too, and in your dreams, you walk the streets of Jerusalem again, but they're empty, silent. The temple still smolders in the background, but no one notices. You're alone, until you reach the old market, where someone stands facing away. The flute player. He raises the instrument, plays a single note, then vanishes. You wake with a jolt as the ship hits rough water. Later that day, the vessel docks at Caesarea. You're marched off in groups, processed like grain sacks. No shackles, yet Rome doesn't waste metal unless it's needed. You're led to a forum. Crowds gather. They've been waiting for this. You look around and realize this isn't just relocation. It's spectacle. Irks. Roman banners flutter. A platform has been raised. There are trumpets, even a man with a lyre trying to make it sound like triumph. You're positioned beside a cart. You recognize it instantly. The menorah. It's on full display now. Polished, elevated. The metal so clean it almost erases the memory of ash and ruin. The Romans want the crowd to see it, want you to see it. Titus stands above resplendent in white and crimson, delivering a speech you can't fully hear. The words are Latin, loud, rhythmic. The crowd cheers in bursts. They wave. Some throw flowers. A man near you mutters, "We are part of the parade." He's not wrong. This isn't about you anymore. It's about them. The image, the message, the myth they're building in real time. You are a footnote in their victory poem. And yet, you look at the menorah. You remember where it stood. The way the sun hit it on a quiet afternoon just before sacrifice. The way its arms seem to hold the light. That memory is yours. Not Rome's, not Titus's. Yours. When the parade ends, you're taken to a holding house. A converted warehouse near the edge of the city. Inside, survivors from other regions are already waiting. Galileans, Judeans, a few Samaritans. Some argue, some cry, some just sleep. You sit with the girl again. She's added a tiny feather to her pouch. Found it on the ship, she says. Feels lucky. You smile. Then she asks you, "Do you think they'll forget us?" You don't answer right away. You take out the scroll, read your line again. "This city did not fall quietly." Then you whisper, "Only if we let them." That night someone begins to sing, a soft psalm, slow and cracked, but beautiful. Others join in, not in defiance, in remembrance. Outside, Roman guards pace. Inside, Jerusalem breathes again. You don't know how many days pass. Time becomes a blur of half-slept nights and slow-moving sunrises seen through high-slatted windows. The warehouse is packed, now rows of survivors lying head to foot on straw mats, whispering names of relatives' towns, gods, herbs, memories, anything to hold unto a sense of before. Some were taken to labor camps, others sold off in groups. The girl whose name you've learned is Noah stays with you. She teaches you how to stitch a pouch like hers. You fail. Twice. She laughs. It's the only real laugh you've heard in days. Every evening you sit on a low bench beside a former temple scribe named Ezra. He wears the same soot-stained robe every day and speaks with a voice like sand slipping through fingers. He tells you stories. Not the ones everyone knows, David and Goliath, Moses and the sea, but stranger ones. Marginal ones. Lost ones. Did you know, he says, one night some believed the ark was never in the Holy of Holies? You raise an eyebrow. Where was it then? He shrugs. Maybe buried beneath the hills. Maybe in Ethiopia. Maybe it was never a box at all. What was it then? Ezra smiles. Maybe just a promise. You think about that as you lie down on the cold stone floor. Noah curled beside you, her head on her pouch of feather seeds and hope. Then one morning you're woken early. Voices outside, Roman orders, fast footsteps. Something's happening. You and the others are herded into the yard. You squint at the sun blinking away sleep. The guards don't bark. They don't need to. They move like stagehands, preparing for another Roman performance. And you're the scenery again. Across the courtyard, 2 carts are being loaded. One is filled with crates, sealed, labeled. One crate is marked with a single symbol, a menorah etched in black. The other cart is empty, waiting for people. You're split again, evaluated, measured without scales. You and Noah are placed in the second cart. Ezra is not. He looks at you, nods once, then vanishes into the crowd. You never see him again. The cart rumbles forward, past villas, past marble statues, past a market where a man sells fresh fish and another shouts about the virtues of imported olive oil from Hispania, as if there isn't a refugee convoy rolling down the main road. You arrive at a small Roman estate just outside the city. It's not a prison. Not quite. A farm, technically. Olive groves, fig trees, a small villa with red-tiled roofs and mosaic floors that feel too clean for your feet. You're given quarters, a converted storeroom, a cot, a basin, a woven tunic dyed just enough to say, you belong to someone now. The estate's owner is an aging Roman named Marcellus, former officer, limp in his left leg. He walks with a carved cane that doubles as a pointer, and sometimes you suspect as a warning. He doesn't beat. He doesn't shout. He just watches. Noah is assigned to the olive press. You're given the task of maintaining tools, axes, plows, picks. You don't complain. It's quiet work, repetitive, honest. The grindstone hums, and the smell of oiled wood settles into your hands. At night, you and Noah talk. Not much, just enough. One evening, she shows you a new addition to her pouch, a shard of blue glass, probably from a shattered mosaic. It catches the moonlight like a star that forgot to finish falling. She smiles, still collecting. You nod, still surviving. But you both know this is something more than survival now. This is witnessing. Days blur into weeks. The rhythms of the estate dull the edges of memory. The temple feels far away. The sound of Torah being read aloud fades from your ears, but not from your bones. And one day Marcellus calls you to the villa. You stand barefoot on polished tiles while he sits beneath a painted arch, sipping wine from a carved cup. You are in the city, he says, almost conversational. You nod. Did you see the temple fall? You hesitate? Yes. He squints at you. And what do you say to a man who watched from afar while everything you knew became soot? You answer with a question. Do you want to know what it looked like or what it meant? His eyebrows raise. Both. So you tell him. You tell him about the fire, the gold melting, the screaming, the priests dragging sacred vessels through smoke, the boy etching names into clay in a tunnel, the girl with her pouch, the scrolls, the songs, the silence after the bells stopped. You don't cry. You don't perform. You just speak. When you're done, Marcellus says nothing. Then he nods as if you've confirmed something for him, or perhaps ruined it. You may go, he says. You leave. Walk past statues of Jupiter and Mars, past a fountain that sings too sweetly, back to your tools, back to the olive trees, back to Noah. And then one evening, something changes. You're working near the gate sharpening a sickle when a man rides up. Not Roman, not local. He wears a blue sash and speaks Greek. You don't understand the words, but the tone is transactional, curious, clinical. He inspects the workers, talks to Marcellus, points. Then he looks at you and at Noah. The deal is done within minutes. You're sold again. Eat into him. The journey this time is shorter, just over the hills. Another estate, another set of tasks. This one has vineyards. You prune vines, wash tools. Noah picks grapes and learns how to stack barrels just so. But something's different here. The owner, an Alexandrian Jew turned Roman citizen, keeps a scroll room. And one day while delivering a basket of figs, you glimpse inside. Shelves of parchment, ink pots, a table near the window with sunlight stretched across half-written words. You linger. The owner appears, sees you. Instead of shouting, he says, "Can you read?" You nod. He gestures. Then come back tomorrow, early. That's how it begins. Not a rescue, not redemption, just a room. And a reed pen. You copy old texts, Psalms, Proverbs, letters, some in Hebrew, some in Greek, some written in a hand so rushed it feels like the ink itself was in a hurry to survive. One day he hands you a new scroll. Blank. Right, he says. You hesitate. About what? He shrugs. About what they burned. So you do. You write what you remember. Not the politics, not the strategies. But the sounds, the smells, the feeling of standing inside something sacred while the world tore it down. And then, at the bottom of the scroll, you write what Ezra told you once. Maybe the ark was never a box. Maybe it was a promise. Noah reads it later that night. She presses the scroll to her chest and says nothing. But in the morning, she adds a new item to her pouch, a folded copy of your words. You don't know how many days pass. Time becomes a blur of half-slept nights and slow-moving sunrises seen through high slatted windows. The warehouse is packed now, rows of survivors lying head to foot on straw mats, whispering names of relatives' towns, gods, herbs, memories, anything to hold onto a sense of before. Some were taken to labor camps, others sold off in groups. The girl whose name you've learned is Noah stays with you. She teaches you how to stitch a pouch like hers. You fail. Twice. She laughs. It's the only real laugh you've heard in days. Every evening, you sit on a low bench beside a former temple scribe named Ezra. He wears the same soot-stained robe every day and speaks with a voice like sand slipping through fingers. He tells you stories. Not the ones everyone knows, David and Goliath, Moses and the sea, but stranger ones. Marginal ones. Lost ones. Did you know he says? One night some believe the ark was never in the Holy of Holies. You raise an eyebrow. Where was it then? He shrugs. Maybe buried beneath the hills. Maybe in Ethiopia. Maybe it was never a box at all. What was it then? Ezra smiles. Maybe just a promise. You think about that as you lie down on the cold stone floor. Noah curled beside you, her head on her pouch of feather seeds and hope. Then one morning you're woken early. Voices outside, Roman orders, fast footsteps. Something's happening. You and the others are herded into the yard. You squint at the sun blinking away sleep. The guards don't bark. They don't need to. They move like stagehands preparing for another Roman performance. And you're the scenery again. Across the courtyard, 2 carts are being loaded. One is filled with crates, sealed, labeled. One crate is marked with a single symbol, a menorah etched in black. The other cart is empty, waiting for people. You're split again, evaluated, measured without scales. You and Noah are placed in the second cart. Ezra is not. He looks at you, nods once, then vanishes into the crowd. You never see him again. The cart rumbles forward, past villas, past marble statues, past a market where a man sells fresh fish and another shouts about the virtues of imported olive oil from Hispania, as if there isn't a refugee convoy rolling down the main road. You arrive at a small Roman estate just outside the city. It's not a prison, not quite. A farm, technically. Olive groves, fig trees, a small villa with red-tiled roofs and mosaic floors that feel too clean for your feet. You're given quarters, a converted storeroom, a cot, a basin, a woven tunic dyed just enough to say, you belong to someone now. The estate's owner is an aging Roman named Marcellus, former officer, limp in his left leg. He walks with a carved cane that doubles as a pointer, and sometimes you suspect as a warning. He doesn't beat. He doesn't shout. He just watches. Noah is assigned to the olive press. You're given the task of maintaining tools, axes, plows, picks. You don't complain. It's quiet work, repetitive, honest. The grindstone hums, and the smell of oiled wood settles into your hands. At night, you and Noah talk. Not much, just enough. One evening, she shows you a new addition to her pouch, a shard of blue glass, probably from a shattered mosaic. It catches the moonlight like a star that forgot to finish falling. She smiles, still collecting. You nod, still surviving. But you both know this is something more than survival now. This is witnessing. Not days blur into weeks. The rhythms of the estate dull the edges of memory. The temple feels far away. The sound of Torah being read aloud fades from your ears, but not from your bones. And one day Marcellus calls you to the villa. You stand barefoot on polished tiles while he sits beneath a painted arch, sipping wine from a carved cup. "You are in the city," he says, almost conversational. You nod. "Did you see the temple fall?" You hesitate. "Yes." He squints at you and, what do you say to a man who watched from afar while everything you knew became soot? You answer with a question. Do you want to know what it looked like? Or what it meant? His eyebrows raise. Both. So you tell him. You tell him about the fire, the gold melting, the screaming, the priests dragging sacred vessels through smoke, the boy etching names into clay in a tunnel, the girl with her pouch, the scrolls, the songs, the silence after the bells stopped. You don't cry. You don't perform. You just speak. When you're done, Marcellus says nothing. Then he nods as if you've confirmed something for him, or perhaps ruined it. You may go, he says. You leave. Walk past statues of Jupiter and Mars, past a fountain that sings too sweetly, back to your tools, back to the olive trees, back to Noah. Oh, and then one evening, something changes. You're working near the gate sharpening a sickle when a man rides up. Not Roman, not local. He wears a blue sash and speaks Greek. You don't understand the words, but the tone is transactional. Curious, clinical. He inspects the workers, talks to Marcellus, points. Then he looks at you and at Noah. The deal is done within minutes. You're sold again. Oh, the journey this time is shorter. Just over the hills. Another estate, another set of tasks. This one has vineyards. You prune vines, wash tools. Noah picks grapes and learns how to stack barrels just so. But something's different here. The owner, an Alexandrian Jew turned Roman citizen, keeps a scroll room. And one day, while delivering a basket of figs, you glimpse inside. Shelves of parchment, ink pots, a table near the window with sunlight stretched across half-written words. You linger. The owner appears, sees you. Instead of shouting, he says, "Can you read?" You nod. He gestures. "Then come back tomorrow, early." That's how it begins. Not a rescue, not redemption. Just a room and a reed pen. You copy old texts. Psalms, Proverbs, letters. Some in Hebrew, some in Greek. Some written in a hand so rushed, it feels like the ink itself was in a hurry to survive. One day, he hands you a new scroll. Blank. "Right," he says. You hesitate. "About what?" He shrugs. "About what they burned." So you do. You write what you remember, not the politics, not the strategies, but the sounds, the smells, the feeling of standing inside something sacred while the world tore it down. And then at the bottom of the scroll, you write what Ezra told you once. Maybe the ark was never a box. Maybe it was a promise. Noah reads it later that night. She presses the scroll to her chest and says nothing. But in the morning, she adds a new item to her pouch, a folded copy of your words. By the time winter rolls across the vineyards, you've stopped counting the days. The olive trees have been harvested, the grape barrels sealed, and the wind carries a cold edge that makes even the stones seem tired. Noah wears a woolen cloak, now frayed, patched, but warm, and her pouch hangs a little heavier from her belt. She never says what's inside anymore. She just smiles when you ask and says, "Everything that matters." You continue to work in the scroll room. The Alexandrian master, his name is Julius ben Mattathias, though no one calls him that has come to trust you. He no longer stands over your shoulder while you write. He just leaves parchment, ink, and space. At first, you copied what he gave you: psalms, historical accounts, long letters from distant relatives in Alexandria, complaining about humidity and tax policies. But then, he began leaving blanks and nodding. Your hand, he said once, tapping the edge of a finished scroll. It's steady. That matters. You've written 4 scrolls now. Not laws, not commandments, just memory, observations, fragments, all titled with the same simple word. Jerusalem. The latest one begins not with a date or a place, but a scent. The last smell before the temple fell was cedar oil and dust. Narki. One morning, while the frost still clings to the vineyard gates, Julius calls you into his study. He offers you bread and a cup of warm goat's milk, a rare indulgence. You sit across from him in silence. I've received word, he says after a moment. The arch is finished. You blink, arch. He nods. In Rome. They've built a triumphal arch in Titus's name, carved in marble. Reliefs of the temple vessels, the menorah, the procession. You imagine its stone arms of the menorah towering over the heads of cheering Romans, each groove etched by someone who never touched Jerusalem soil. A crowd watching clapping, drinking wine, children pointing at sacred objects they'll never understand. They turned it into decoration, you murmur. Julius leans forward. Rome writes in marble. We write in breath. You glance toward the scroll room. Your hand tingles, ink-stained fingers twitching. Then we keep writing, you say. How? The next few weeks, you write more than ever. You and Noah spend your evenings under candlelight, huddled around the desk in the back of the scroll room. She reads as you write. Sometimes she suggests a word. Sometimes she just hums. One night she brings a scrap of linen. What's this, you ask? Banner, she says. For what we build. Even if no one sees it. You smile. Then she says something strange. I want to go back. You pause. To Jerusalem. She nods. Someday. Even if it's just to stand in the dust. You say nothing. You both know returning is impossible. Dangerous. Maybe fatal. But she looks at you with that same fire she had the first day you met. And in her eyes, you see something Roman soldiers can't take. Something empires can't crush. Return doesn't have to be physical. Return can mean memory. Return can mean writing. Return can mean standing in someone else's story years from now, holding their hand as they whisper, I didn't know. And you'll say I did. One morning, Noah is gone. You wake, reach for the pouch she always kept at her side, and it's there, resting in your hand, as if she left it for you to find. Inside a feather, a smooth seed, a scrap of burned scroll, a tiny shard of gold, and the blue glass. At the very bottom, folded neatly, is a note in her handwriting. Take this. Write everything. When someone asks, you'll know what to say. You ask Julius if she was sold. He shakes his head. She asked for freedom, he says. And you gave it. She earned it. You carry the pouch every day after that. Time folds again. A few years pass, or maybe more. Rome forgets the parade. The arch becomes part of the background. Tourists stare at the carvings and comment on symmetry. The menorah is still there, lifted forever in stone, but no one weeps beneath it anymore. No one cheers either. Just a silent monument to a story no one quite agrees on. You live in the hills outside Caesarea now, working in a modest scriptorium run by former students of Julius. He passed quietly, no illness, no ceremony, just a half-finished scroll and a faint smile. They buried him beneath a fig tree. You wrote his name on a stone. Your scrolls are passed around now. Quietly. No fanfare, no authorship, but they travel to Egypt, to Cyprus, even back to Galilee. Sometimes a young reader will ask, did you really see the temple fall? You always say yes. Then they ask, what was it like? And you pause. Because how do you explain something that is no longer there, but never left you? You tell them about the fire, the smell, the singing in the streets, the boy etching names in clay, the girl with the pouch full of tiny hope. And then you say, the only thing that ever feels true. They destroyed a city, but not our story. No, one day, an older man visits your scriptorium. He wears a Roman cloak, but his sandals are worn. He carries no sword, just a walking stick and a satchel of parchment. He introduces himself as Marcus from Carthage. I read one of your scrolls, he says, years ago, in a merchant house. I kept it. You blink. How did you know it was mine? I didn't. He shrugs. But the ink smelled of olives. And the handwriting. It trembled a little, like someone was writing while remembering pain. You nod. He opens his satchel and pulls out a scroll. Yours. The one that began with, "The last smell before the temple fell." You trace your fingers over the parchment. Faded now. Frayed. But intact. He says I want to translate it into Latin, so others can read it. You hesitate, but then you nod. If you do, you say don't remove the silences. He tilts his head. What do you mean? The pauses, you say. The space between the words. The parts where we didn't know what to say. He nods solemnly. I'll leave them in. Door. And so the story spreads. Not like a fire, more like a wind. Quiet. Persistent. You never return to Jerusalem, but others do. And when they stand where the temple once stood, they carry your words with them, folded into pouches, tucked into memory, etched in breath. Not marble, but something stronger, something that survives. The light is different now. The way it filters through the olive leaves, the way it rests on stone. Softer, maybe? Slower. You rise earlier these days, not out of duty, but rhythm. The birds sing just as they did before the siege, though you swear their songs carry a different tone. More questions, fewer warnings. The scriptorium in the hills has grown quiet. Younger scribes now sit where you once did, and you've moved to the outer bench, less a writer, more a watcher. And that's all right. Your hands, though, slower still know the shapes. And when parchment lies before you, blank and waiting, they move without hesitation. The scrolls you write now are simpler, less grand, but more honest. Today your task is not to remember the fire or the screams or even the grand arches of Rome. Today your scroll begins with, "This morning, a bee landed on my cup." You describe the way it hesitated, then drank the dew from the rim. You describe its little legs trembling under the weight of such a simple decision. You wonder aloud on parchment whether bees mourn their hives when they collapse. This too is history. No, sometimes travelers visit the hill. A merchant from Antioch, a fisherman from Tyre, a group of students from Gaul who've heard of the old scribe who lived through the fall of Jerusalem. You meet them in the courtyard. You don't tell them everything, just enough to stir curiosity. A smell, a sound, a question. "You're very old," one child says. You smile. "I know." "Were you scared?" "Terrified." "Did you lose everything?" You pause. "No," you say, "not everything. Some things were never theirs to take." One quiet evening, as the sun leans into the sea, you take out Noah's pouch. You've never added to it, never dared. But today you remove one thing, the glass bead. You hold it up. The light catches in its center, still blue, still bright. Then with the tip of your penknife, you scratch something tiny into its surface. Just one word. B. Remember. You tuck it back into the pouch and leave it on the ledge outside your door. The next morning it's gone. You don't ask who took it. You hope they carry it far. Your final scroll begins the way they all do. A blank sheet. A breath. You dip the nib in ink. Hesitate. Then you begin. Some say the temple was destroyed in a single day. They forget the centuries that led to that moment. They forget the slow choices, the political games, the pride, the exhaustion, the 1,000 quiet cracks in the walls, long before the fire ever touched it. You write until dusk, and when your eyes grow too tired, You close the scroll and leave it unfinished. You leave space, because some stories are meant to end gently. Or, that night in your dreams, you are in Jerusalem again. But it is not burning. The walls are tall. The streets are clean. The bells ring softly as dusk falls. Children run through the alleyways. A baker smiles. Someone sings from a rooftop. And in the shadow of the great temple, whole and golden, you see her. Noah? She looks older too. But her eyes, those haven't changed. She waves. You walk toward her. She holds out her hand, and in her palm, the glass bead glows softly in the firelight. Nukti. You wake with tears, but also peace. Because in this version of Jerusalem, no one forgets. So now, as the last words settle into silence, let's allow the dust to rest. You've wandered across ancient stone, heard the shouts of soldiers and the whispered prayers of the weary. You've walked the scorched courtyards, ducked beneath broken arches, shared barley with strangers, and listened for meaning in the echoes of empire. And through it all, you've remembered. The city may fall, the gold may melt, the banners may be torn, but memory weaves itself into breath, into parchment, into the quiet hum that never truly fades. So tonight, let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Feel the cool air drift across your skin like a breeze from those distant hills above Caesarea. Hear the faint rustle of scrolls being turned somewhere in the distance. Imagine a candle flickering, a scribe smiling faintly, dipping their quill just once more before resting their hand for the night. The past doesn't need to be loud to be true. Sometimes the gentlest stories are the ones that linger longest. So rest now. The walls are safe. The fire is out. And someone somewhere is still writing. End of script. Sweet dreams.